place, but more importantly, we want to make it a productive place. With that said, I'll start to my left, and I'd like the panelists to introduce themselves, and then prior to, I'll introduce myself and then pass it to my left. I'm William Marshall. My background is that I've spent 5 years with probation and parole as an adult probation and parole officer. I worked in Gander Hill Prison in the pretrial services for the first year and a half before I moved to community supervision. From there, I went to the University of Delaware to work with what's called the Upper Bound Program, which is a college readiness program. I spent 12 years there simultaneously. I've sat on the board of 2 charter schools. I currently own and operate an educational consultancy where we work with students overseas. We bring students to the U.S. We do SAT prep, and we're in over 4 different high schools now. Really working to make our communities a better place. So I'm really hoping I can gain a lot of information that'll help me go back and inspire and impact the students.
Good evening. My name is Mark Stevens, brother of Pastor Ernie Stevens. Thank you. Currently reside in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm Director of Operations at Urban Gov Teen Charter School, and I work with at-risk youth. So we basically take in students who have been unsuccessful in 9th grade. We get them back on track to graduate in 3 years. When Pastor Ernie asked me to speak on tonight, or to be part of the panel, I was more than willing. I was pretty much an activist, I'll say, in my college days at the University of Arizona. We were doing a lot of kind of protesting on campus to get some things done at the University of Arizona. Because I don't know if you know, that was the last state to vote in the Martin Luther King holiday. So at that time, I was in school with the U of M. We did a lot. So with the recent events that have happened, I think I've become, that activist in me is kind of sparked up, because I feel like, particularly working with the youth that I work with, and they have so many things stacked against them, I think it's time that I'll speak for myself, that I take a stand and do something to make sure that everyone from everywhere has a fair shake, and that we understand the issues, because I think what's most important is that we are educated about the issues. And one of the things that I started to do was to really start to do some research about what was really happening, and what were statistics, and what did it look like, what did crime look like in every aspect. And so that's one of the things that I'm here to do, is hopefully gain some more information and also maybe give some information.
Good evening. My name is Bill Wolford. I'm a recently promoted lieutenant within the Kennesaw Police Department. I have been employed with the police department now for a little over 19 years. We are a very community-oriented police department, and I was very thrilled that we were asked to come here and be a part of this, because it's not something that, it's something that needs to be done. We need to be more active. We need to address the concerns that people may have, and we need to hear them. And unfortunately, a lot of times people don't want to bring that information to us. So I'm very happy that we can be a part of this, and glad to be here. Thank you.
Hi.
My name is Jeremiah Boyer. I'm actually a recent addition to Kennesaw Borough Police Department. My history goes such as this. I'm a graduate of the Lincoln University, holding a master's degree in education. So prior to becoming a law enforcement officer, I was a teacher, a social worker, and a therapist. I figured this was just a natural progression for what I wanted to pursue, I guess, long term. I'm here because I was asked to actually be here. I think it's an honor to be here in front of all of you to give you my perspective, especially someone who doesn't have a lot of experience such as Eltia, the guy you meet down there. Anyway,
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am the Reverend Gregory Tully. I serve the Unitarian Universalist Society in Mill Creek, which is right over here on top of Pickle Mill Park, Polly Drummond. Talk about impromptu. I actually just learned about this meeting this morning and came here just to sit where you all and to listen and to learn. And Pastor Stevens said to me, why don't you come on up and sit? So this is, I was honored to be asked and appreciate it.
Hello everyone, my name is
is Marisol Tackett. Pastor Clarence Stevens asked me to come and speak this morning, or this afternoon. I'm not a public speaker, so I'll do my best. Pastor asked me to speak because he, as he calls it, I have a hood aspect to it. I'll bring my hood aspect to it. But I actually have a more realistic, less of a book background. I left home when I was 15 years old and had my children at a very young age and got into some trouble when I was younger, and I turned it all around. I kind of did everything backwards. I dropped out of school at a very young age. I had my kids when I was 17 and 19. I got my general education diploma right after I had my first daughter, and then I went back to school after I had my second daughter and went to Golden Beacon and got my 2-year degree from there. At that point, I met my husband, who I've been with for 24 years now. But I basically went from being really bad, a bad kid, to someone who turned it around. And I tried my best. I have done my best to turn it around. I have turned it around. And I help as many people as I can. And I have taken in many people from the time I was 15 years old, believe it or not, when I was living on my own with my boyfriend, with my children's father, rather. I've taken in every relative you can imagine, friends and nieces and nephews and cousins and sister-in-laws, and have tried to help them turn it around as well. Whether it worked or not, I tried, but I do what I can to help who I can. And when everything happened recently over the last week or so, it really touched my heart, and I really wanted to just come forth and do what I can to help my community and my friends and whoever I could. And when Clarence came and asked me if I would help out, I immediately jumped at the opportunity, and that's why I'm here.
Good evening. My name is Maurice Thompson. I am retired from law enforcement, 24 years. 4 years with the city of Wilmington and 4 years with the state of Delaware Capitol Police. That's the police agency where the shooting was at the courthouse. That's Capitol Police. I separated just 1 year now from law enforcement. I'm now an investigator with the state of Delaware. I investigate abuse and neglect in nursing homes. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm here because Pastor Stevens, which I'm my family church, and my wife told me, Pastor wants you gotta go, so they heard that. She didn't tell me why I was coming. It's okay.
Now that the panel has been introduced, we want to make sure that this is an opportunity where we hear from the community. So even though we will embrace a Socratic method, we also want to embrace a grassroots method where if you have a question, if you want to respond to a question, just raise your hand, you'll be acknowledged, and then we'll go from there. I think the most appropriate way to open it up is for us to kind of lay out the three things we really want to look at. Number one, we do want to look at police brutality, but we also want to look at current day attitudes toward our police and really see if we can find a bridge to those two phenomena that are going on right now. And then finally, we kind of want to deal with, are we asking the right questions? So with that said, I'll throw it to any panelists. We'd like to hear from law enforcement first. Can you give us a law enforcement perspective on the national climate on police brutality, what we've seen through social media? Are we rushing to judgment, or is there, quote unquote, a problem?
I think we can all agree there's definitely a problem. In my opinion, we certainly do rush to judgment very quickly. And in my profession, it's really all about having all the facts, all the evidence before we make a decision. But there is truly a problem that has to be addressed.
Okay, fair enough.
If I may add to that, the media shows snippets of the situation, and it may not be the entire truth. And like this officer said, it rushes to an opinion, and you don't have the facts. And I think the dangerous thing with that is people absorb that as the truth without having the facts, and then this perpetuates the separation that's going on. And it starts, they hate one side or the other, whether you're pro-police or anti-police, you still don't have all the facts. But I think the media has a role, irresponsible role right now, which
Anyone else from the panel would like to tackle that topic? Question from the audience? Okay, so the next question. So I recently looked at a study just published out of Harvard 2 days ago, where they took a look at whether there was a difference in the use of force by races. And so the stylized facts that came out of it was that when it came to lethal force, there was no difference between how force is used on the job against suspects who may be black or white, but for non-lethal use of force, where it came to maybe handcuffing or frisk or even, up against the wall, there was a significant difference. With that said, this is where I kind of want to talk to the community to see if we can get either an anecdote or two or even an opinion on, do you think cops or the police force uses force differently depending on race? Is that real, or have you experienced it? This is where we need to be brave.
Well, I wasn't always a police officer, and I like to tell everyone that I come into contact with that, I haven't always worn this badge, and I've had plenty of dealings with the police as a younger gentleman. I think it's interesting when that question is posed or brought up, because when you look at that, you also got to look at the areas in which these arrests are being taking place. And I like to I don't know, let's talk about Kennedy per se. Let's talk about Kennedy and how 50% of the population is Hispanic.
50% of the population is Hispanic. And so naturally, when you look at those statistics and arrests and, based upon community, the majority or more of our arrests are going to be Hispanic individuals. Let's say you go to Beverly Hills, you have rich, opulent, affluent individuals. Most of those arrests, are going to be those. So I guess you have to look at the community and, yeah.
Your arrest numbers will reflect the community in which the officer is working. It's just that simple. If you want accurate data, United States, it's a website. I can't remember. As soon as I remember, I'll tell you all. And that's where you get your FBI data. And it gives you national numbers, and you can Google or search any of those.
It'll give you your uniform crime reporting.
Exactly.
And that'll break it down into race, everything, crimes
Exactly.
committed.
And that's where you're going to get your most accurate information nationally. Locally, the numbers are going to be different based on where the officer works.
If I can understand your question correctly, you want to know if there's a different approach to arresting a black, African-American black versus a Caucasian or a white person.
Yes.
Is the use of force equitable?
Well, what I'm saying is, I guess if I'm not, because I'm going to be sensitive, because my husband is a former police officer, and I always want him to come home. My thing would be whether it be white, black, and different. Depending on how someone approaches you, you react to that. That's like me and her sitting here, and she may not be as aggressive to me. I might not feel a fear of aggression, so I won't react that way. Whereas she may come off very aggressive, and I'm going to be aggressive because I'm the one that wants to come out on top. And in their case, go home. So sometimes I can see what the police officers are dealing with or going through out there. And it doesn't matter what your race is. Because I know this gentleman had young men pull a gun on him, and his first instinct was not to shoot. He had the comments that talked him down, whereas I'm saying at home, why you didn't shoot him? Because I wanted him to come home. But he's like, I had control because you're the black one, your friend Mike, he wasn't. So, and it would have been Mike who did it. So it's unfortunate that that's the truth, but we all have some type of responsibility in how we carry and conduct ourselves out there.
So, in tactics, if I can add to that, police tactics will vary based on color. That is a baseline of how to be safe and how to approach people. That doesn't change depending on color. Your demeanor changes how we react to you. Demeanor. In my experience, and as an instructor, you don't judge by the color. You react to the action, and that's how it should be done.
So, can I play?
Dr. Mike?
In the back?
That's how it should be done, but you don't think individual officers, based on their experience with race and individual personalities, over the years become jaded and may approach
And that's
a
possible.
specific
That's
race
quite
differently?
possible. That's
Because
quite
you're speaking
possible.
for
On both sides.
Okay.
The officer could be jaded, and the people dealing with it. If a person has frequent contact with the police, he's going to be different than that guy that has the first time contact.
I want to jump in. I want to just backtrack real quick. So the website that you were speaking of, it's FBI.gov. That's where I did a little bit of research. I wanted to say just the reality of it. I know that when we speak about these issues, we're not talking about maybe individual, but I do believe that there are certain perceptions that people have of the police, and I think that there are certain perceptions that some police officers may have, in particularly about black men. And I have to say, I haven't had brushes with the law, except for suspended license. But that said, as a black man living in Brooklyn, New York, I do have some fear sometimes. And when this incident happened recently, just driving down here, I was like, all my stuff is clear, thank God, but I was like, I was afraid. And I think that's the reality. Is there a reality? Yes, I believe there are good cops and there are bad cops. I believe there are good people, black people, white people, yellow people, good and bad. But I believe that the reality of what's happening now, there are some perceptions on both sides. Sometimes I believe even the way that police react could be based in some of that fear. And I know the way that I react sometimes is based on a fear when I'm out in public and afraid that if I just get stopped for a routine stop, could it escalate to something else? And even if it doesn't, why as a black man do I have to be the one has to follow a different set of rules outside of everyone else? That's kind of my question and my statement.
So, we have a question in the back, and then you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Demeanor is not a quantifiable thing. You can teach people to be objective about demeanor, but you can't quantify that. It's always been accepted that a confident black man is considered arrogant, but a confident white man is just confident. So we have a lot of things to talk about that go much deeper than the things that have gone on this past week. There are the things that we see in each other all day, every day. I've always had a question as to why you can catch me with an ounce on the Jersey Turnpike, but Mr. DuPont's son, who brings in a ton in his private Learjet, doesn't ever get caught. See, so, and I have a question about that.
You know what, and I don't really think you don't like answering. I'm a paralegal when I was in law firm. And I can tell you right now that boils down, 9 out of 10 of the time, it boils down to money. And it boils down to how much money that person, that individual has for an attorney.
Please speak loudly if you're on the panel.
If you have one person here, I'm sorry, if you, many times I've seen this, and I've seen this personally, and I've seen this in the law firm. I've worked in law firms where I've worked in many different law firms. My first job, as a matter of fact, at a law firm was at a criminal defense office. And I used to work for this one attorney who, he only took major, big time, where his face was slammed right in the camera and he was on television. But if these people who didn't have money came to him, the only way he would defend them was if they owned property. And he would have them sign the deeds over to their houses. I will represent you if you sign your deed over to me. He would represent that. But there was no way he was taking care, and he was on the top of his game. He was up there. He was one of the best attorneys out there. But let me tell you, if you have no money, you're going to get a public defender. And with a public defender, good luck. It all boils down to money at the end of the day, unfortunately. That's why that happens in those kind of scenarios.
So what you just said was that justice is blind. Those scales have never been balanced. Okay. So if that is the case, then how do we bring about a balanced commentary about this if there is no balance in where we start from in the conversation?
I would suggest two things. First thing is, put the weed away. We don't get caught on the turnpike. That's just a smart thing to do. So in other words, if I'm a black man and I know I'm going into the court and I know they're going to hit me with more, the first way to fix it is not to even put myself in that situation. The second thing, and I can speak to what she's saying as a probation officer, if we get a little more smart and strategic with our money and make sure for any purpose we have a lawyer, whether it's to represent our property rights or whatever it is, then it will work out better. I had two situations. One was a family member was falsely accused of a robbery. He sat in jail, he lost his business, but his lawyer put up the money and he punched it out of court. He was a black male, had his own business, didn't have a lot of tax returns, but his lawyer fought for him. As a probation officer, when I did pre-trial, every single time, whether it was black or white, I can assure you of this. If you have a lawyer, it works out better. Unfortunately, what you're saying is right. If you're white and have a lawyer, it works out even better. But I think the conversation starts with, let's make sure we're on the right side of right, and then every time we see a tragedy, how can we learn from it? This gentleman had a question.
Yeah, I'm going back to the difference between white and black being stopped. One arrest confuses me. It's that woman who, I don't know where it happened. She had made an illegal lane change, and she was pulled over on a Saturday morning, and she ended up being arrested and thrown in jail for 3 days and committed suicide. And it was all filmed, and I didn't think she overreacted. She was like flabbergasted, like, you're pulling me over for making an illegal lane change? And just that quick, they put the cuffs on her and she was arrested. I would never expect that to happen to me. I just can't believe that I would be pulled over on a street that's lightly traveled, move over a lane without signaling and being actually pulled over. I just don't believe that would happen to me.
Based on, you saying you don't believe it would happen to you based on your color?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know how it happened ever. That whole situation makes absolutely no sense, no common sense, anything. And again, I'm not familiar, which state was that in? Louisiana. I have no idea what their actual laws are, but I can tell you in Pennsylvania, the worst thing that could have happened to you was you would have gotten a traffic ticket.
That was in Texas.
So I have no understanding of how that could have even evolved from that. It blows my mind, honestly.
can I add something? A traffic ticket, the written ticket is a courtesy. You can be brought before a judge for any traffic violation. This made the process more expedient for the person stopped and for the law enforcement officer so he can get back into service. That's why the written ticket was developed. You can be brought before court for any kind of traffic violation. The ticket is a convenience.
In Pennsylvania, though, only the state police can actually bring you before magistrate.
Okay.
Local
In
police.
Delaware, similar.
Every state has some different variations
Exactly.
in their operating procedures.
So in regards to that particular incident, this is where I'm asking, having worked with the law enforcement agency, are we asking the right questions? Not necessarily should they have or could they have, but was it acceptable, was it appropriate, and what should happen so it doesn't happen again? And I think a lot of times we're either enraged at the tragic incident, and then I think sometimes law enforcement officials may first do the investigation, look at the use of force matrix, and by those policies and standards, the person could be justified and illegal, but the question is it appropriate, is it right, does that policy need to be So what I would like us to begin to think about is, before we rush to judgment, okay, not even if someone's cleared, but is that a good policy? Should you be able to bust a window? Should you be able to go hands-on when the person's a passive aggressor, and things of that nature? We have a response.
Yeah, I just have some comments. Good evening. I'm an educator, so I find myself traveling, going to Dover quite a bit to the EDO, the office, and so rarely do I see a state trooper. Every now and then on Route 1, I do. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But I noticed that when Delaware State University has their homecoming, they're in full force. And I just want to comment about this. My daughter, this past October, was coming from work. She works in Dover, and she wasn't attending homecoming, but she was speeding, and so was everybody else out there. But the trooper told her, said, if you're in the fast lane, you know, if you're going to speed in the middle lane or the right lane. But anyway, plus she has to be a car. So he stopped her, and he approached her with the taser drum. Now, I just want to know, when did that become a protocol? Taser drum. And she could have reacted to that, and it could have been a different scene.
She would have to ask that officer. I have no idea, I wasn't there. You don't know what he felt, what was on his mind at the time. We would have to ask that officer.
And again, the question is, why is there, you know, what is the protocol about them being out there? Of course, with Delaware State University has their own.
I'm gonna say this, in regards to where I worked at a university, a couple of things. You really do want them there in full force. And the reason why I say that as a former university staff member and a former university party goer. So we want them to get home safely. I think the only question we should have then is policing, and are they conducting themselves within the limits? In terms of the taser piece, I would say the better question maybe to think about is what happened next. So if an officer feels threatened, or it's been a crazy night, and maybe that car looked like another car, once you respond to the situation, if the threat level decreases, did the taser go away?
There's many variables, man, many variables.
You gotta look at movement inside the car, how long it took to stop the car, over, were there a tent on the window, could you see inside the vehicle? I mean, there's, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but like she said earlier, that, you know, the wife of this gentleman here, I want to go home at the end of the night, and, you know, I have a wife and 2 kids at home that need me, and if I'm stopping the vehicle because of any type of, you know, violation, and we can stop a vehicle for so many different things, especially in the state of Pennsylvania. I want to get home at the end of the night, and if I stop a vehicle, and I can't see inside of it, but I see, you know, I see movement, or I'm stopping the vehicle and they're reaching, you know, something, I'm gonna be extra cautious, you know, going up to that vehicle, and I might even call for another unit, you know, in that moment, just to make sure that, you know, we're all safe.
Can I ask law enforcement this, and especially some of our officials who have some time? A former law enforcement officer in Baltimore said he believes the reason why a lot of overreactions are taking place is because the standard of training has changed, and some of the police traditions have changed. In this particular precinct, he said they had a tradition called last man standing, whereby at the end of the academy, their sergeant put them all in one room and said, punch each other out. He said, but the philosophy behind it was, we want you to be comfortable with taking a punch. We want you to know how to work through it. And we want to find out, is this job really for you? And he said from his perspective, in his township, what he sees is a lot of new officers who are at a different level of training, they don't even want to take that first punch, so they fall to a position of, I want to get home safely, even when maybe they're spending $1 worth of force where a nickel was needed.
I just have one more question about.
Sure.
Yeah, I just want to know, what should I tell my son, my grandson, and high school kids that I work with? What should you do when you're stopped? You know, I mean.
Follow the directions.
Excuse me?
Just follow directions, pay attention.
Okay, I mean, freeze? I mean.
If the officer says,
What do you, I mean, it depends really, what are they being stopped for? Is this just, they're just ran a red light by accident?
Yeah, it could be speeding.
Honestly, the most appropriate thing to do, just keep your hands on the steering wheel.
Right, that's what I told
Or in
them.
plain sight.
Okay.
Yes, officer, no officer, you know, whatever information the officer asks for you, just comply, and you could be gone within minutes. You know, that's all.
The last thing, don't reach for your glove box before being asked to do it. Do not reach anywhere else until you're asked to do it. So just sit there and wait for your instructions.
We talk about,
One
I'm sorry,
second.
I got
I'm gonna jump in real quick. Young lady in the front.
I'm sitting here getting really frustrated because we're talking about the perceived racism within the police across America when at the root of the problem is the inherent racism across the country.
Correct.
And the police and the perception of racism real in many, many, many cases, especially in certain parts of the country. Until we address the racism that is at the basis of everything else, those attitudes are really, I don't think they're ever going to change. We have to start at where the rubber meets the road and ask the really hard questions and really get to the core of it. This is a symptom of the racism that is all over this country. This is a symptom. And until we can cure or start to address that issue, this is going to continue.
Let's hear from the panel and then back to the audience. Officer, you have the floor.
We talk about what, what drivers can do and how they should, behave when they're being stopped. And I just want to say, honestly, I'm just as scared as the person that's being stopped. How are they going to react when I come into the car? Am I going to get shot before I even get to the rear of the vehicle?
I'm actually more scared than the private driver is. And this is after 19 years of doing this. I have no idea who you are, what you could have done. Could you have just killed your husband, your wife, robbed a bank? I have no clue. All I'm stopping you for is because either your tag light's out, you ran a red light, you're speeding. Something that could be so simple that I could walk up and be dead within seconds.
And that Baltimore thing sounds